Now, have you ever wondered what it was like before you came here? It's an interesting thought. We always think we're born, we come here, have our life, grow up, have these experiences that we're going through right now. But as a matter of fact, that's not the whole truth to it. There's far more behind you than you possibly realize. It starts before you're even born, before you come into this world. Think of it as your soul, your oversoul that's looking over you and decides what kind of experiences you'd like to have in this reality. So you'll sit there, plan things out with your guides as to what you would like to experience in this lifetime, the kind of challenges you'd like to have, the things you'd like to learn, experiences you want to go through and have. And then you'd plan that all into your life. And in order to craft that kind of experience, so you get that sort of growth from within yourself, you're going to come into certain groups of parents with certain family dynamics, all designed to give you the experience that you specifically wanted to when you came in here. So think of it this way. It's almost like as you're coming into this world, everything has been perfectly crafted for you to have the sort of experience that you're having in your life right now. From the parents that you had that may have been loving, may not have been loving, from the family dynamics you had to not having a family at all, to having a really loving family. Everything is crafted to create your personality and your persona to be the way it is, so that you can then go through the experiences that your soul wanted you to have when you came here. And that's not the only thing. So as we go through these experiences in our life, if you noticed that things reflect themselves back to you all the time, you might see repeating patterns in your life. You go through the same sort of partner type, the same sort of relationships, where you might attract a certain type of person. Sure, the new person might be slightly different, but they'll have a similar sort of dynamic to them. Or you'll have something that triggers you on the same area, but just in a slightly different way. So say you had one partner that triggers certain feelings of anger inside of you. You might have another partner that triggers you differently in terms of things like frustration and other things like that. It's all trying to mirror back to you the thing you came here to experience, learn and grow. And that all comes from everything that was designed before you came here. Now, don't get me wrong, there is free will in this lifetime and things can go slightly awry. We can't always follow this master plan that's laid out for us. It's a general guide to our life that we set out. So on that route, we put exit points along the way. So throughout the course of our life, we'll have what I'd call near misses. You might have an experience where, gosh, if I hadn't have quickly reacted there, I would have been cream crackered because my car would have gone into a wall. Something along those lines. Some other scary experience where you might have been choking suddenly and you couldn't breathe for a moment. All these little things play into exit points that we build into our life. So imagine your higher self is guiding you through every step of the way. It's like someone in charge standing on the mountaintop as you're walking down through the valley. They can see the routes and the travels that you go on as you go that way. And if you take some turns that they can see lead to dead ends or lead to things that you didn't really need to come here to experience, you didn't really want to, they'll try and gently steer you in a different direction. Now, the signals that come through can be gently guided through your intuition. That's that gut feeling that you tend to get, that I should do this, I should do that. Now, if you start ignoring those gut feelings, we go through to the next level where you start getting bigger and bigger warning messages that you've gone slightly off track. And if we go too far off track, eventually our higher self can hit us with both emotional sledgehammers and almost physical sledgehammers. You might have a very physical experience of some massive injury because your higher self is trying to correct the route that you're taking for whatever reason. And you've got to bear in mind that this is an intricate tapestry woven with all of those around you. Everyone else comes in with their own experience that they want, has their own purpose of being here, the growth that they wish to experience, and it all interweaves with your life and their life. So as we go through that whole pattern of weaving in amongst things, when you get to the point where your higher self says you're off track too much, you can experience what I'd call an exit point. This is a situation where your higher self can judge whether you've gone too far off route, and it's time, frankly, to pop your clogs. That might sound a little bit harsh, but if you think about it from a perspective of the soul looking down from above, if you've gone too far awry, it's better sometimes to stop where you are and start again and try it from a different angle. So sometimes when you go too far off track and you're not really serving yourself, and sometimes you could be doing things that are quite detrimental to yourself, generating lots of what you'd call negative karma and things, because you're perhaps gone down a route in life that maybe you shouldn't have gone down. Maybe you've gone down that route of drug addiction, some other form of addiction, and you've not managed to step out of it and go to the positive side, and you're just spiraling down into a hole. That's where you could have a what you'd call close encounter, near-death experience, where you perhaps had an overdose of drugs or something like that, and that would be another exit point. Throughout our life, we build in these points so that at some point we can choose. And don't get me wrong, this is not a choice from our persona's perspective, although sometimes we can have an influence from our dreams and other things into it. This is going to be from the higher self's point of view as to whether we're still on our mission, on our plan to be here, and whether or not we're succeeding in that plan. And if not, that's why you might get someone that exits their life a little bit early, quite tragically. But you have to remember, they're not gone, they're just changing to a different form. So when we die, in essence, our physical body here is going to die, but everything that was contained within that, all of our experiences, all of our identity is not lost. Even though you might think that us here, we are what you could call like an egoic construct. We are the persona of Paul in this instance. That's never going to be lost, because as we delve more and more into the science of our brain and consciousness, scientists have more and more found that memories aren't stored in our brain. They're effectively transmitted somewhere else. Our brains are effectively like antennas. Our DNA is almost like mini antennas, and science is slowly starting to recognize this more and more. There's more things coming along to these lines. You can have really traumatic brain injuries where you perhaps stop being able to form like short-term memories or long-term memories and things like that. But the brain can often successfully reroute and navigate neurons to that information, because the information is not actually stored there. It just has to create the antennas effectively pointing back to the locations. And that is what can be often lost in these situations where you have people that have brain injuries and things. But I've digressed slightly. So everything about you will never be lost. It will always exist. And so when you exit from this body, your essence will still very much be there, and you'll go back and integrate into that higher self or oversoul. Now here's the next interesting concept with this oversoul. Your oversoul has only projected a portion of your consciousness into this physical body that you have here right now. So I might be having 3% of my oversoul's energy coming into this experience that is Paul. We might then have another 20 different lifetimes that are concurrently running at the same time that have another percentage of energy each. And where we are here in this physical body, we experience time. It's the way that we can track our progress, growth, changes, and have this experience of being human. Where the oversoul and the higher self sits outside of this level of sort of reality as we know it, there isn't really time in the same way that we understand it here. So when we talk about things like past lives and other experiences like that, they can actually be happening concurrently, because time is not necessarily a factor over there. So you could be having 20 or 30 simultaneous lifetimes all at once, all contributing to the higher oversoul that is you. Now, this oversoul, one way to look at it is a little bit like someone holding a plate of diamonds. So say there's 100 diamonds on that little silver platter that they're holding in front of them. Each facet on one of those diamonds is a person's lifetime. So each diamond on its own can be made up of hundreds of different facets, all contributing to that one diamond. And then there's hundreds on the silver platter as well. There's levels to our soul and our oversoul that ultimately form up the being that we are. You can almost imagine it like a drop of water. We are a drop of water. Now that drop of water can then go into a pool where it collects with other drops, and that would be what you might think as our oversoul. It's taking all of the knowledge, the information from our different facets of life, from different experiences, different lifetimes, to form what in essence is itself. And then you can take that even further. The pond can then connect up to a stream, and that expands even more. So when we go through and talk about our oversoul, it's not just that one person holding that platter full of diamonds that contains thousands of lifetimes and experiences. That might be in a council, a group of 50 other beings, all standing there representing different facets of different parts of beings. And those come together as a collective, effectively becoming one being as one. And then the stream might then merge into a river and eventually out into the ocean. So this is where we see ourselves as very separate from everyone else around us, but actually we're just a different drop. And eventually our little pond and puddles might meet together and will ultimately go back to the same thing. Now, you've heard people talk about God and Source, and this is almost like the ultimate level. It is the oneness of everything. So as our consciousness is returned back, our soul goes back after having an experience in a lifetime, what we'll go through is a life review. Now, I've had this from many of the hypnosis sessions that I've conducted. I've taken people through their death scenes in those various different lifetimes. And what is a typical common pattern is you will effectively review your own life. And you'll do it from the perspective of yourself. So you will be judging yourself kindly, and all aspects of your life will be judged, but only by you, not by others. They'll be just reflected back to you. You'll get to experience everything that you did that hurt people around you, and you'll get to experience it from their perspective. When you're in that review, you can sense what it was like to be them, to receive that harsh message from yourself. But it's not all negative. It's in fact mostly positive. All the times that you opened a door for someone, said some lovely comments, made love to someone, all of these things are in there as well. You'll get to feel what the other person felt and experienced from their perspective when you do those wonderful things to them. And all of this wraps up into your collective life experience that then goes off to become part of that oversoul. And at that point, you get to choose whether this portion of yourself, this energy, wants to come back and have another lifetime. Or you could go back and join the greater pool or the greater collective of source energy. And I've had discussions with all of these angles of beings. It's interesting when you go through these sort of past life regression techniques that I tend to do, you go through and experience every level of this level of source and soul energy. So sometimes I'll get through to the person's subconscious and just talk to the subconscious, which is at the certain low level here. It can affect their body and other things like that. The next level might be their oversoul, their higher self, where they can then direct energy and healing into different aspects of themselves or pass you messages from that high mountaintop. And it all comes down through messages through you as you're speaking them out. Now, I've had discussions with the collective group of beings, and this doesn't even have to be beings from here on earth, because who's to say that your soul is not part of soul family that also has extraterrestrial lineage? It doesn't just have to be human lifetimes or here on Earth, you might have well had experiences on other planets, being other types of beings, being animals, being rocks. Everything here around us has some form of consciousness. And that might sound a little bit silly to think that everything has some sort of mind to it. And it wouldn't be the same as saying a rock is the same as a human being, because clearly that's not true. It's a different type of consciousness around it. You might get to experience eons of time just experiencing the stillness of being there as a rock, but you wouldn't have the same emotions to process those sort of things and the same recognition of time as a human being would. I've had people in my sessions that have had lifetimes as dogs, where they've just had a chill out life. They wanted to be in a really loving family, having a chill out life after a previous one that was maybe a little bit tough to get through. I've had people being all kind of aquatic animals and beings from other worlds. It's absolutely fascinating, the stuff you can go through. And what happens is this oversoul, this collective, forms into groups that are even higher. And eventually, as we were saying, it gets back to source energy. Now, what is source? Now, some would call it God. Some would call it the oversoul of the universe. You could call it that way. Or I just call it source energy. Some people call it the universe, but ultimately it is the oneness of everything. And at this level, there is no separation. There is no gap between you and me. Everything is one. Everything in the universe is one. And I've had people that have gone up to those kind of levels and been able to talk to source energy directly, even though it's talking through a human being. And the conversations I've had on those fronts are quite astonishing. But it's almost like, how do you talk to God or the universe or source about what it's like to be a human? It's almost like imagining yourself and you're talking to a little speck of bacteria that lives in your gut. And you say to the bacteria, what's it like to be human? And the bacteria is like, I don't know, I just eat sugar and, float around and process things. Or a red blood cell in your body. It has no concept of the collective that it's part of around it, other than it knows it's part of a system. And that's the same with us. We know we're part of nature, we know we're part of a system, but human beings were never designed to have all of the concepts that would be contained in that vast consciousness of the oneness that is everything. So it's quite far removed from our experience here. So the answers that you can get when speaking to source are often quite distinctly unique and very different. And that's not to belittle our experiences. Everything feeds back into the oneness of everything as it's learning and growing and learning more about its existence, about what it is. And it's this continuous cycle that we go through. You might, after some heavy lifetimes, go back and chill out in source energy and just want to feel that oneness for a while. And then after a while, you'll choose to leave that and have the experience of separation again, just because you wanted to learn something specific and grow in a certain area. Again, when we're looking at the drops in the water, it's like the river then goes into the ocean, which is the source energy. It contains absolutely everything, and there's no limit to it. It's infinite in its nature. So why do I say this and tell you this? It's just to highlight how amazing we are. We're part of this system of absolutely everything, and it all comes into this beautiful experience of being a human being. So it's easy to think when we die, we lose someone. And from our perspective, it's very sad that that someone and person isn't there in our life anymore. But quite often what happens is when you go through that life review process, when you go to the end of your lifetime, or if you reached an exit point, you will then meet that person, that soul again. And you'll laugh and joke about the fun that you had in the life playing the role that you did. And what you'll end up doing with your soul family is going, do you know what? How about this lifetime, instead of being your partner, I'm going to be your daughter. You can be the dad, I'll be the daughter, and then one of your other soul family chirps up and says, oh, I'll be your father this time because I want to give you that experience you wanted. You wanted to see what it was like to have a really stern father that was teaching you to grow up in that way, so you could learn to be like loving in spite of the fact you had a really stern upbringing. All these things play into what we experience in our lifetime. So when you see people talk about past lifetimes and other things, they can often be concurrent and in the future from our perspective. I've had that with sessions with clients as well, where the experience they have is clearly from the future. And those sorts of things all play in to form those facets in the diamonds of our oversoul. So I just wanted to express to you a little bit about what it can be like to experience some of these things. So I've experienced this firsthand through my sessions, through clients speaking this stuff directly to me, and more often it's directly to themselves because they got a message that they need to send themselves about the route. Maybe it is a course correction in their life or some change they wanted to know. Sometimes just finding out their life purpose is why they come here, to have that experience, see what it is that they need to grow and move forward in their life.